What's up, guys? Nuance Bro checking in, and today we're going to be talking about San Francisco Mayor London Breed and her plan to combat crime in the city. But before we do that, a word from our sponsor today, Ground News. We love nuance on this channel, and unfortunately in today's media landscape, things are more partisan and sensationalized than ever, because that's what's incentivized financially. Social media apps aren't much better since they are designed through algorithms to keep you engaged as long as possible, and due to human nature, this often results in us finding ourselves in political echo chambers. This is a problem, but thankfully, Ground News is here to help. Ground News is a first-of-its-kind website and app that lets you compare how a single news story is being covered from across the political spectrum. It's not simply a news aggregator, it's a tool with tons of easy-to-use features that help you analyze the news so you can be confident you're getting the whole story. The bias distribution chart shows you which media outlets are reporting on an issue and where they fall on the political spectrum. You can even compare headlines to how phrasing changes between news outlets. One of the best features has to be the blind spot feed, which shows you stories that are underreported on the left and the right, which you can use to break out of any echo chamber you find yourself in. So if you're looking for a better way to stay informed about current events around the world, check out Ground News by visiting ground.news/nuancebro to download the free app. Links as always in the description box down below. So in response to the crime wave in San Francisco, the city's mayor came out against crime in December and said this.
And it comes to an end when we take the steps to be more aggressive with law enforcement, more aggressive with the changes in our policies, and less tolerant of all the bull that has destroyed our city.
That was the concluding flourish from Mayor London Breed's remarks today. It was both a policy speech and something of a personal declaration that the current state of affairs is no longer acceptable.
We are not going to just walk by and let someone use in broad daylight on the streets and not give them the choice between going to the location we have identified them or going to jail. What I'm proposing today and what I will be proposing in the future will make a lot of people uncomfortable, and I don't care. And we are past the point where what we see is even remotely acceptable.
So that's some tough talk from the mayor on crime. By the way, I love how they're in the background. There was this couple getting married and doing a photo shoot and all that in City Hall. Beautiful building, by the way. If you're ever in San Francisco, highly recommend visiting, but don't visit San Francisco because it's crime ridden. But I just thought it was hilarious how, the mayor's up there going on a tirade about crime and she's swearing, saying bullshit, and you got this couple in the background. I just thought that was hilarious. But you heard what she said there. She's not just targeting drug dealers. She's also targeting drug users, saying that if they don't go to the designated areas that they've put aside for them, whether that's treatment centers or homeless shelters and things like that, and they continue using on the street, she would have them arrested. Remember, she said that. We're going to get back to that. And as you can see, this story was reported December 15th. The mayor's speech was on December 14th. And as you can see from this article here, also on December 15th, Nancy Pelosi, London Breed, and Gavin Newsom escalate rhetoric on San Francisco retail theft. So all these California Democrats started coming around at the same time, shifting their language on crime. Before, they were denying it, but now they're all about, we're going to get tough on crime, we're going to fix things. It was really interesting to see. In fact, let's take a look at Nancy Pelosi's comments on December 15th talking about this.
The mayor said about some of the issues specific to San Francisco, some of the retailers leaving there as well.
Well, it is. It's absolutely outrageous. Obviously, it cannot continue. But the fact is that there is an attitude of lawlessness in our country that springs from I don't know where. Maybe you do. And we cannot have that lawlessness become the norm. And these people have, they coordinate with each other, and they plan traffic patterns and the rest so that they can reach their goal and depart very quickly. And some of it is, again, high-level stores, as the retailers have told us, and some of it is your local Walgreens. But none of it is acceptable. And again, it has to be stopped.
So as you can see from the title of the article, Pelosi slams outrageous crime surge, won't admit to liberal cause. You could see as she was speaking, she talked about this lawless attitude, and she's like, I don't know where it comes from. Maybe you do. She doesn't know where the lawless attitude comes from, really. She has no clue, no idea. This is the problem with a lot of these lawmakers. They're not honest about the problem. They want to pretend, where could, I have no idea. Where did this lawless attitude come from? It's just as if it just, materialized out of thin air and it just appeared before our eyes out of nowhere. And we have no ideas what the cause of it could be. And maybe some of you think Nancy is dumb enough to not know the answer to this, but I think she actually knows. She just doesn't want to say it because it doesn't look good for her politically or socially at her, whatever weird drinking wine clubs that she goes to and dinner parties and all that in San Francisco and Napa Valley. You have soft on crime policies. You have DAs that don't prosecute the crime. You continue to pass laws that lower the sentences for these crimes. You play into the narratives that allow certain groups to claim victim status and basically society excuse their lawless action. We just had mass riots a couple years ago over this issue of racism and policing, which many Democrats got behind the cause of. Not to mention the defund the police movement, which was born out of those riots, which many of the further left progressive wing of the Democratic Party embraced that type of rhetoric. Rhetoric in many cases, which they actually turned into policy in many cities around the country, and you have where we are today. Now, you also had the White House that responded in this change in rhetoric from the mayor of San Francisco. Let's take a look at that.
When gun crimes are taking lives, when families don't feel safe going to the park or their local schools, when thieves feel impunity in stealing from retailers. So we applaud the mayor making sure that there is more police presence in the city to protect Americans. And so if you're a mayor, this is what we say to local leaders. If you're a mayor or a local leader, there is a crime problem in your community. We think you should step up and do something about it, just as many mayors are already doing. And we've made clear that we're going to offer federal support to help you do that and to keep communities safe.
Now, that came one day after Nancy Pelosi's comments. Now, it's very clear what they're trying to do here. It's a coordinated effort to try to change the perception of the American public that the Democrats are this soft on crime party, because they know, if history's any indicator, when Democrats are viewed as soft on crime and you have a crime surge, a crime wave, Republicans absolutely dominate. If you look at the polls, that's what's happening right now. Democrats are moving down in favorability considerably. Republicans are moving up considerably. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's numbers are in the toilet. So Democrats are absolutely terrified when it comes to the 2022 midterm elections. Speaking of the idea of defunding the police, the mayor who's talking tough right now, London Breed, used to be a supporter of defunding the police. In fact, that's what she did back in 2020. As you can see here, San Francisco Mayor London Breed announces cuts to police in new city budget. The mayor announced a $120 million cut to the police and sheriff's department.
Breed also announced a major $120 million budget cut to the San Francisco police and sheriff's departments. That money instead to be spent on addressing disparities in the city's black community.
I want black boys growing up today to thrive because we chose to change how this city and how this country treats our young black men, not as a statistic or an inevitable tragedy, but as an important part of our city's future.
Chief William Scott said in a statement, while the cuts are significant, they are cuts we can absorb and that will not diminish our ability to provide essential services.
So there you saw the mayor was cutting the budget for the police department by $120 million. This is no small number. And this wasn't a situation where it's like, look, we have to make cuts because we have a budget shortfall or something like that, and we just have to make cuts across the board. She was literally taking that same money that she was cutting from the police department and instead putting it into this sort of racist program of, we're going to use that to bolster up the black community, which we're going to get to in a second. But before that, you saw San Francisco Police Chief William Scott, who I interviewed, by the way, back in November. I still haven't published the interview, so if you want to see that and you've enjoyed the video so far, give the video a thumbs up. It really helps us in the algorithm. Always appreciated. Also, leave a comment as well. You saw him say that these were tough cuts, but that they were cuts that they could absorb and not affect, policing and things like that. Remember, the police chief is appointed by the mayor. If he doesn't do what the mayor wants, if he doesn't do what she says or makes her look bad, she can fire the guy. The police chief is effectively a puppet of the mayor's office. But you can see here that the San Francisco Police Officers Association said they're worried about response times and their ability to hire new officers.
But the Police Officers Association says response times could suffer if the department can't hire new officers.
It could impact our ability to respond to emergency calls for service if we don't have the necessary staffing.
In fact, you can see in this article here, June 24th, 2021, San Francisco grapples with drastic drop in police recruits. SFPD needs about 400 more officers, and the shortage has gotten worse from 12% in 2020 to now 18% shy of where it should be, according to the department, and based on an independent study commissioned by the city and Board of Supervisors in 2020. By the way, take a look at this. By a 3-to-1 margin, city residents want more cops and expanded community policing, according to a new City Beat poll released Thursday by the SF Chamber of Commerce. The poll also says 8 in 10 residents think crime has gotten worse over the years. Now let's take a look at one of these programs that the San Francisco mayor funded with that $120 million that she cut from the police department. Here's just one of the programs. This is the news release on March 25th, 2021. Mayor Breed announces launch of guaranteed income pilot program for San Francisco artists. The city is partnering with Yerba Buena Center for the Arts to implement $1,000 a month economic relief program for approximately 130 San Francisco artists hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. And they have a website, guaranteedinc.org, where it says the San Francisco Guaranteed Income Pilot for Artists. And let's scroll down because this is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. So far you have 190 artists, 18 months, receiving $1,000 per month. That's $3.4 million. And check out how they talk about this. The idea of guaranteed income, money not tied to work or employment, is rooted in economic and racial justice movements, including Black women's freedom movements in the US. So basically, we're not paying you for work. This is a form of reparations. Now you might say, well, how is it reparations? Isn't it tied to just being an artist? If you're an artist, you apply, it's equal and fair for everyone who's an artist. No, check this out. A targeted approach. San Francisco Guaranteed Income Pilot for Artists is built specifically for BIPOC. If you don't know what BIPOC is, that is Black, Indigenous, People of Color, and Artists of Color, LGBTQIA2S+, plus, if you don't know what that is, lesbian, gay, bi, transsexual, queer, I forgot what the I is, asexual, and two-spirit. Which is like I think a Native American type thing. And the plus, I guess, just means like everything else under the sun. Immigrant and disabled artists. Self-reported demographic data from the first phase of SFGIPA, representing a cohort of 130 artists, reveals 95% identify as at least one of the following demographics: BIPOC, LGBTQ+, disabled, and or immigrant. 23% identify as Hispanic or Latinx. 17% identify as Black or African American. 17% identify as Asian or Asian American. 49% identify as LGBTQIA2S. 52% identify as disabled. 19% identify as an immigrant. 100% face income loss resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, if you're a straight, white, male, or female, you are actively going to be discriminated against if you apply for this. Now, this seems highly illegal that you're going to discriminate against white people, but hey, I guess the rules don't really matter when it comes to them. You already saw the video I did on monoclonal antibodies and how they're doing racial discrimination for the distribution of that. Check that video out if you haven't already. And by the way, make no mistake, there's discrimination against Asians here too. Even though they're listed and 17% does sound high for an Asian population, you have to take into account that Asians make up about 35% of San Francisco. So while 17% of the artists in this program are Asian, that is half the percentage of their portion of the population of San Francisco. So they're drastically underrepresented. Whereas Blacks are represented by over 3 times their population of San Francisco because their population's at around 5%, but there's 17% of the artists supported here. And look at this beautiful statement. Structural racism, not individual decision-making, is the root cause of economic inequity and poverty. So racism is basically to blame for everything. You can't blame culture. You can't blame individual decisions. There's a lot of things you can't blame, but what you can blame 100% of the time, absolutely and completely, is racism. Now, getting back to San Francisco Mayor London Breed, she got a lot of backlash initially from some people in her own party in the city of San Francisco, the more progressive folks, for making this announcement. And in light of this is where we started to see some of the contradicting statements, but we'll get into both the contradicting statements and the backlash that she received from the more progressive people in the city. So let's take a look at some of these statements.
What about those people, let's say, who aren't acting in a criminal way? They're homeless, they're sleeping in a tent in the Tenderloin. If they refuse to accept a shelter bed, would you support the arrest of such individuals?
What I will support the arrest of is if someone is breaking the law. If you're sleeping on the ground, that is basically not something that you would take someone to jail over. So I think what these elected leaders are doing is misconstruing what I said I would do.
So there you saw, for example, she said what she supports is arresting people who are breaking the law. But then she goes on to say that people sleeping on the ground, sleeping on the street, that's not something you would take someone to jail for. But that is breaking the law. That is illegal in the city of San Francisco, the state of California. This is a crime. It is illegal. In fact, as you can see here from SF Gate, what happened to San Francisco's controversial sit-lie ordinance? The sit-lie ordinance, which allows officers to issue a ticket or misdemeanor for sitting or lying on city streets, appears to be a less popular tool for San Francisco Police Department as the numbers of cases has trended down in recent years, records show. So you can see here, for example, over 1,000 infractions in 2013, and they steadily declined to around 114 in 2017. That's a drastic drop, but it is a crime. It's a crime in San Francisco to lie on the street like this. If you wanted to enforce it, you could. It is a crime. It's someone committing a crime, but you contradicted yourself there by saying you support arresting people for crimes. You're going to get tough on all this. But then you said that's not something you would arrest someone for. Which one is it? Here's another example where she has this tough talk of making life hell for these people on the streets who are using drugs and things like that.
And we are going to make people who are dealing drugs, who are using drugs out in the open with no regard for the community, people who are assaulting and spitting on and stabbing and shooting and destroying this community. We are going to make life hell for them.
So there you saw, again, she said, people who are using drugs out in the open, we're going to make life hell for them. Now, in response to this emergency measure, the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco came together to vote on this, and some of them were quite concerned with this type of rhetoric, so they wanted to get clarification from the Director of Emergency Management in San Francisco, who works for the mayor, is appointed by the mayor to do all this. Her name is Mary Ellen Carroll. She has her pronouns in, not even just in bio, but in her username, she, her, hers. And check out what she had to say in response to one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, Hillary Ronen, asking her about the mayor's comments.
I very much believe, because we're getting hundreds of emails from our constituents saying this, and if you read all of the press, in the mayor announcing this major effort in the Tenderloin, she has left the impression, and has said it, I believe, that she will have police officers approach people that are very sick on the streets and say, we are offering you treatment, and if you don't go to treatment, we're going to arrest you and put you in jail right now. Is that how this plan is going to work?
Thank you, Supervisor. That is not how the plan is being constructed and developed.
4 years ago, when we did an operation like this in the Mission, when there were 260 tents, we had a very, very clear plan that was written out, agreements made. We knew exactly what was going to happen. And so we haven't seen that for the Tenderloin. And so my next question is, what happens if someone says, nope, I'm not moving, I want to stay here?
So it depends. This is not this is a voluntary location.
What I disagree with vehemently is that criminalizing addicts is the way to solve the overdose and drug crisis. That's what I really disagree with. And what I heard the mayor say in the press was that if people don't accept services, that they will be now taken to jail. And she said that. I mean, I can find the articles. She said that. And what you're all describing to me is something completely different. What you're describing to me is kind of what Matt and I wrote for Mental Health SF, which we obviously agree with because we wrote the law. And when we've been trying to implement it over the past 3 years, everyone's been telling us, no, we don't have the money, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources. The pandemic has been delaying it. And so that's why I am like really digging into this, because I want to vote yes on this today. Believe me, I want nothing more than to. But if you're going to arrest people, it doesn't make sense. Our system can't handle it. And so that's what I want you to tell me today, that this is all about getting people a place to go, to marshaling resources to open this linkage center, which, by the way, I hope is the beginning of the mental health service center that we created in a piece of law that we've been begging you to implement for, not you, Chief, but the city, the Department of Public Health, to implement for years. And we've been told there's not enough resources. So I need you to tell me, and then I'll vote yes. But I need you guys to tell us that what the mayor said was not true. You are not going to arrest and incarcerate people that refuse to get services because they're sick. Can you tell me that?
Yeah, okay, Supervisor, what I can tell you is this. Yes, we will engage with people, and our objective is to get them to a better place. It's as simple as that. You know, some people are out there committing crimes in the midst of the drug usage, but that's not what this is about. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're not going to deal with crimes that are happening in front of us, particularly violent crimes. That's not what this is about. This is about.
That's not my question, Chief. That's not my question. Of course, you're going to intervene.
So we're not planning on using an arrest tactic to clear the streets. That's not what this emergency declaration is at all. At all.
Can you tell me they are not going to arrest people that are not the crime they're committing are being addicted to drugs and have a health crisis? They don't want to go to the linkage center for whatever reason. Are you going to arrest them for not going to the linkage center?
The message that we will tell people is, look, you can't use drugs on the streets. Now, we're going to bring somebody to help you. It's not going to be us that are going to take people there in a police car, because we need the officers to be out in the streets to really, because when we're out there, there's less chaos, right? The idea is to have the service providers be the warm handoff to get people on the streets. We will tell people you cannot use drugs on the streets. Now, let's say we say that and somebody lights up a meth pipe in front of them. Well, let's be real that we can't allow that to happen. But the idea is to get the people involved in this situation that can mediate, that know how to deal with this situation, where the arrest is not the solution. That is what we're striving for here.
Okay.
For all the reasons that you said.
So there you can see very progressive member Hillary Ronen questioning the Director of Emergency Management, Carol Mary Ellen, as well as the police chief, William Scott. And she's calling it out as she sees it. She's saying, look, what you're saying here is very different than what the mayor has been saying in the media. So can you just tell me she was making that up or just talking tough and just lying to the public so that I can vote for this measure? Because she doesn't want to vote for the version that the mayor has been putting out in the media, because that's too aggressive. That's not, she wants it to be a lot softer on crime. She doesn't want to throw people in jail who are disobeying the law and committing crimes. She wants all that to continue, I guess. So these people are trying to talk her down and say, no, it's not like that. And you saw, they said, no, that's not what the plan is. That's not what we're going to do. And she's like, that's great, because that's not what I've been hearing from the mayor. But you guys saying this, I'll vote for it if what you're saying is the case, because that's what I advocate for. So that kind of all exposes it right there. By the way, Hillary Ronan asked why the mayor's office did not consult with the district attorney of San Francisco when they were drafting this plan. It's kind of obvious. If you've known, I've already talked about Chesa Boudin multiple times, but this guy is crazy, doesn't prosecute crimes. He's clearly not ever going to support any measure like this. And when the mayor announced her plan, he didn't. You can see what he said here. In this article from the San Francisco Chronicle, DA Chesa Boudin joins critics of Breed's Tenderloin crackdown to protest plan. Arresting people who are addicted to drugs, jailing people who have mental health struggles, putting folks who are vending hot dogs or other food on the streets in cages will not solve these problems, and they are certainly not the only tools available. So that shows you where he's at. Now, that Board of Supervisors meeting happened December 23rd. They were frustrated that they didn't have a detailed plan writing out everything that the mayor's office intended to do through the Department of Emergency Management and things like that, and through the police department. And 5 days after they voted to approve the measure, that's when the detailed plan came out. So it's one of those things where it's like, we have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it, sort of deal. And this is the detailed plan that they put out on December 27th, the Tenderloin Emergency Initiative Strategic Plan and Operations Guide. And I have to say, some of this is pretty funny, just on how vague and weird it is. I mean, let's just take a look at this one. This one's probably my favorite example here. So they talk about crisis operations between December 17th through March 17th, 2022. This phase focuses on implementing emergency tactics to move away from the 7 identified neighborhood problems and toward the proposed solutions. And here's my favorite sentence here. This will be accomplished through incident management best practices, which operate on a standardized operational period and is managed by coordinated objectives. Let's read that one more time. This will be accomplished through incident management best practices, which operate on a standardized operational period and is managed by coordinated objectives. What does that mean? What are the coordinated objectives? I have no idea. That makes no sense. Is that even the English language? What? Who talks like that? That sounds like the kid in class who didn't do the reading assignment and is just adding a bunch of words to make the essay longer. Also, I didn't see any major news outlets even announcing this detailed plan. I had to find it through some very obscure sources. This website 48 Hills covered it, and also the Twitter account Coalition on Homelessness. And that's about it. I didn't see it anywhere else. And it's been about a month since this emergency declaration, and so far, really much hasn't changed. It's a lot of the same old, same old. The mayor came out. She talked tough. This isn't the first time that she's done this. They'll come out, they'll use the tough language, and then very little happens. They get the backlash from the progressives, and then they start telling them, oh no, what she said on TV, well, that's not exactly what we're going to do. Actually, here's what we're going to do. It's actually what you want to do. It's actually what you wanted the whole time. It's not actually what the mayor was saying with all this tough talk of cutting the bullshit in our city and putting people in jail if they don't stop using the drugs. It's a tale as old as time. So anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Social media links are in the description box below, as well as merch. Support us at nuancebro.com/join, and I'll see you next time, bro.